also,
Can you put the link in? Frank, can you put the link in for people to register?
well, you have to register for the whole meeting.
Well, I did that already. The question is then how do I get to?
I'll put
Register for
it in again. The link is in the chat, but you may have joined after, so it's there. That should be. That's weird.
Great. And if I can have like questions like that, if we can just type those questions into the chat and then people can get them as they go on. Anything else, Frank?
Nope.
All right, Seth.
Thanks. Yeah, so Climate Generation is moving into our December theme on supporting youth leaders. And so we have a Teach Climate chat discussion on Twitter next week. But the big thing is on December 16th. We have 3 youth as part of Youth Environmental Activists, which is Climate Generation's youth program. We'll be doing a panel discussion just on how educators can support youth in climate change action. And I'll put the link in the chat. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other announcements? I have one, I think. Oh, hello there. Always good to have new climate scientists join us. So I'll be at AGU as well. We have a couple of presentations at AGU in the session that's the clean session. But the NSTA regional sessions, 2 updates there. So the National Science Teachers Association, so the NSTA regional meeting in Portland and in National Harbor have been done, and there was a whole bunch of presentations. Myself and Mike Hines, who's the head of the Council of State Science Supervisors, did a presentation in National Harbor 2 weeks ago, and we were asked to record it after the fact. So we just produced the recording last week, and so that'll be available online. And it was a really great sort of like version of what we've been thinking around climate justice learning and resourcing. Also related to that, so that'll be up on the NSTA website somewhere. I'll eventually have a link for it. And then the other one is the NSTA at LA, so the Western, Southwestern meeting. There are several, there's like a keynote per day, and I'm the 3rd keynote for that. And so I brainstormed with our lab yesterday around what we're doing, but if anybody wants specific resources or activities highlighted in the keynote, because like keynotes are weird for me. I don't usually stand up and talk for an hour. So if you want any of your work highlighted or resources that you want highlighted at that event, which will also, that'll be recorded on site and posted, please make sure you email me, not the day before the presentation. You are not getting your stuff in my slides if you email me the day before the presentation. So I'm just going to put my email in the thing here. So please go ahead and email me, preferably in the next week. I have my presentation is the 11th of December. Nice, the book. Yeah, I'll try. Actually, you know, I forgot about that. So you might want to email me and remind me to put my own down book in that thing. Anyway, so yeah, anyway. Please feel free to email me with specific resources or requests. And it would be lovely if you had images with that, because I'm speaking in narrative only. I'm trying to speak to examples of what this looks like in practice and then provide resources and links. Okay. And I think that's it for now. Any other announcements? All right. I do apologize for being a little scattered this week. Usually I'm a little bit more on it for the facilitation generally. I'm trying to remember, I think we have Amy and company talking to us today, but I have yet to actually look at the schedule. So I apologize, but apparently my brain thinks when I can type. So is that right, Amy?
Well, yeah, Amy and Andra. Oh, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Amy and Andra, perfect.
Yes.
Deb, I have one quick, I forgot. While we're at AGU, we generally as a community convene in a social gathering and networking opportunity. Imagine that might be in your email, Gina, but you know, this is a weird year for in-person AGU. So, but Gina, if you could put in there, if you are at AGU, just who is coming to AGU, from the clean community so we can actually start, finding a time that makes sense for face-to-face gathering somewhere in New Orleans.
Yeah, that would be excellent. And also if any of you who are coming to AGU have a burning desire to be networked with some of the people in the Gulf region, please also let me know that, because we're working on some meetings around the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, which is also based in New Orleans. So just put that in the notes and we'll work it out. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Andra and Amy.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning for those of you guys here on the West Coast. A few months ago, before COP26 and all of that, we were meeting and people had questions about what was going on in California regarding our climate change and environmental literacy, budget allocation and curriculum that we were able to get in motion here. And I work at 10 Strands as the K-12 program manager, and one of the main things that we do is we support CALI, the California Environmental Literacy Initiative, and one of the exciting projects that we have is supporting leading edge exemplars. We thought that school districts would be the main unit of change in getting environmental and climate literacy into schools, but we've actually learned that county offices of education are a bit better situated to do that. So I know that some of you guys know Andrea Yagoyan from San Mateo County Office of Education, and she's here to just showcase some of the powerful integrated work that she's able to do in that role related to both environmental literacy and sustainability and leadership development to support not just individual teachers, but entire systems. So that's my introduction. Take it away, Andrea.
All right, thanks, Amy. It's exciting to be here. I love all the different agencies that are part of this network. So I'm just excited to share a little bit about what's going on in California. And I will, it's helpful for me to have some slides if that's useful for others to have visuals. And then there's lots of links embedded as well. So I'll just go ahead, if it's okay, and share my screen and walk us through a couple of different things. So I know that a lot of folks there are folks who are familiar with California's context, but for those that are not, I just want to do a very quick high level overview of what's going on in our context. And to start with this idea that we do have definitions for environmental literacy, we have a blueprint for environmental literacy, and we also have backbone support, like Amy mentioned, through 10 Strands and also CALI. So we have a lot going on that is helpful for us to be able to do more in California. We also have a state superintendent who does understand the connection between environmental literacy and equity. So that's a really exciting piece as well for us. And we have environmental principles and concepts that are embedded into many of our standards and frameworks. I think one other key piece to the context is that we have all these relevant policies and guidelines. And I'm just showing the notes here so that people, if they want to, they can click on any of the links. This takes you to a document that has like an explanation of all of those different mandates and policies that are relevant to environmental literacy. So needless to say, we do have a pretty supportive context, but it's a really big system. And so when I talk about the system and when I talk about like what Amy just mentioned, like we thought the districts were maybe the unit of change, but we're realizing in California, because of the way that our system is nested, that county offices can play a really critical role. And in general, county offices do a number of different functions. They support and monitor the local education agencies. They, instruct special populations. We do offer instructional and technical support. We do like workforce development. But a really key thing that we do is also to lead high impact countywide initiatives. So that's where this work comes in for me, is to lead a high impact initiative around environmental literacy and sustainability. And we feel like that's really important in California to involve a county office of ed, because in our context, we do have some large urban and suburban school districts, but they're really concentrated in California, and they really only connect to about 12 different county offices of ed. So even though they serve a big portion, they serve 30% of the students, the vast majority of California's system is really broken into these very small or medium-sized school districts that really do rely a lot on county offices of ed to support them. So that's why we are thinking about things in a different way in California now, of really thinking about how can we invest in environmental literacy and sustainability at a county office so that that county office can become the backbone support for the work that's going on in the districts and schools. So still want to see the change happen in the districts and schools, but just adding this like kind of middle manager piece to it. So I'm going to share a little bit about San Mateo County's theory of action for how we're doing it, and then open it up for questions. So in San Mateo County, in our context, we're situated right between San Francisco and Santa Clara. So we're right in the heart of Silicon Valley. We have 23 public school districts, and which is about 170 schools, and then also about 100 private schools as well. So you can see here in the map that it's a pretty fragmented context, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well, because that's true for our cities and towns. We're working with a population that we use the phrase in California that's 40% unduplicated, meaning like English language learners or foster students or special ed. And I wanted to share a little bit about the mission of our work. So we were the first county office in the state to launch a comprehensive initiative that's really thinking about how can we help our school districts bring sustainability and environmental literacy into the space. So we think of ourselves as providing backbone support to our San Mateo County schools to prioritize environmental literacy, but also to really integrate environmental sustainability and climate resiliency practices across the school's campus, curriculum, community, and culture. So that's like at the heart of our mission. And the framework that we're using for this is right here. And it's really the idea that, like I mentioned in the mission statement, like we want to see our schools and districts do stuff in their facilities and operations. So we really do target that greenhouse gas emissions reductions and zero waste efforts and things of the campus nature, but also really seeing shifts happen in the curriculum as well, so that students are getting opportunities to learn about environmental issues and topics, and also be part of the solutionary process of coming up with solutions. And then really thinking about community and culture and how to help our school districts build a culture that really supports environmental literacy and climate resiliency. And of course, we see how all these things are connected, like using the campus as a laboratory for learning, and also how the relationship between campus curriculum and community and culture. So we help a lot of different stakeholders in order to achieve a framework like this. And we also are really, really clear in our county that we are asking for change, that what we're bringing is change. We're not going to hide behind it and just pretend like, oh, no, it's not, you're already doing it. Like, no, you're not doing it and you need to do it. So that's why we're bringing this. So we really think a lot about all these different change theories, like seeing our schools and districts ready for change. How can we help them manage change? How can we help them prepare, plan, and design for change? And how can leaders be more disruptive in their approach to change? So we really build that into our theory of action. And in our theory of action, we focus on capacity building programs, having stakeholder networks. We do some things that are kind of the combination of that. So we have like an annual summit, we have recognition programs, and then we also provide customized technical assistance. And of course, a lot of resources to do all of the above. So I'll just talk a little bit about all these different elements of it. So the first one is just like, why capacity building? So when I came in about 4.5 years ago, I noticed that we really had a need for leadership at all levels. When I talked to different school districts, people were pretty unfamiliar with what it meant to be a teacher in the classroom to do this work, or what it meant to be a principal and support this work, or even what it meant how to be a youth leader and really try to make change happen in the community. So we started to develop quite a few different capacity building programs. We already had one in place, thank you to 10 Strands. We had a teacher fellowship program already in place. And so we just really expanded that fellowship program. So all of our programs support key stakeholders to really develop knowledge, skills, and values for doing this work in their school community. And if you're a teacher, that means helping your kids go from knowledge to action in the curriculum. If you're a student leader, that means like being an incubator. We host a program where we are an incubator for their community impact projects, and same with our administrators. So they go through like a semester or year-long cohort program where we really help them bring the change forward that they want to do in their community. So that's been really successful. And I'll just exit out here and point in the notes section of the slide deck. There's links to all the different programs. And there's also a little spreadsheet here that we're working on where we're collecting like change maker interviews of some of the folks who've been really, really successful in the programs. So that's the capacity building programs. We also, the idea of the networks, I just wanted to explore this a little further. In our county, and again, this is true for many other counties in California, it's really fragmented. We're operating across a pretty fragmented landscape. So we have 15 different cities and 5 towns in unincorporated areas. And then we have our 23 school districts. And in many cases, it's not a perfect alignment. Like it's not like city and school district all together. It's like half of this city and then half of that school district, or this school district with 5 different cities and towns. And so it's very complex to try to help move some of the work forward. So we feel like networks and collective impacts are really necessary in a county like ours. And so we have a couple different networks. We have a network for environmental education providers, where we're really helping those who are doing student-facing programs. We're helping them connect better to school districts, because our main goal for this network is to have every student at every grade level have an experience with a community-based partner. So this network's been going for about 4 years. And after 4 years of really supporting this, we realized, okay, we need a person whose sole job is just to be like a liaison between the partners and the districts and to set that up. So we're currently in the process of hiring for that position so that we can really achieve this equity goal. And then we have another network that's focused more around the facilities and operations. And that's like to really get some of the different city and county agencies and other nonprofits in the county more directly connected to the school districts. We find that there's actually a lot of resources in California, especially in the Bay Area, for doing work in facilities and operations, but our school districts don't really know about it, or they're not first in line when incentive programs roll out. So we're trying to figure out how to get them there and more at the table. Lots of times, all these different city and county agencies will be like, well, we've been emailing the facilities directors and we've been emailing the chief business officers. And the chief business officers will say, like, who are these weird people emailing us and why are they emailing us? So our role at the county office is to like let everyone know, like, you're friends and you can make change happen together. So that's been a good network that we just got off the ground this year. And then we do technical assistance as well, like direct technical assistance to our school districts. So why do we do it and how do we do it? It was definitely confusing for our county office, or not, maybe confusing is not the right word, but it was definitely innovative for our county office to figure out how to do technical assistance across all of those different elements: campus, curriculum, community, and culture. I think we felt really safe in the zone of curriculum, like we understood how to do professional learning and how to make that happen. But it's the other pieces on the facilities and operations and the community side that we had to really figure out, like, what does it mean to really provide technical assistance out to our districts? So our office had to really figure out, okay, it means like we're doing consultations and coaching and of course training and professional development, but it also means doing a lot of assessment and strategic plans. So we've been doing a lot more of like comprehensive baseline assessments of what's going on across the school's facilities and operations, and what do they need to put in place, and what kind of projects do they need to put in place in order to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and then how can they simultaneously use that project to learn about it in the curriculum. So we've been doing a lot of that type of strategic planning with different school districts, and then of course networking folks and helping the school districts manage these projects. So that's been a big push this year, is to really define these different services and then get these services out to our districts. And for me, it meant also I needed a lot more boots on the ground to be able to support our office to do that. So I was able to get some funding from some of the local utility agencies and county and city agencies to be able to have a staff member who can really just go out and do technical assistance only on green facilities. And then we're able to bring on 2 Climate Corps fellows to also help us with some of these efforts. So that's really helped me be able to offer more out to the schools and districts. So this last little piece here is what happens when all the pieces come together. We see things happen. So the theory of action really is working. We're starting in our 5th year here, and I can really say that we have seen momentum build across our county. And something that we did, and it's down here in the notes of this slide, we've developed a profile of each of our school districts. And I'll just click on one of these so you can see what it looks like. So we went and really thought about what has the progress been in each and every one of these school districts. And we mapped out like kind of where they're at in terms of like, do they have buy-in in the school district? Are they implementing projects? And then we actually analyzed for each of those elements: campus, curriculum, community, and culture, like where they're at with it. We're still working on doing like what's happening specifically in the individual grade levels and classrooms. You can see right now it says it varies by school site, which means that they don't have like a comprehensive environmental literacy plan that ensures that every kid has equitable access. And then we also are keeping track of the community-based partners that they're working with and kind of what's going on in their community and culture. So this has been a big leap forward for us to have something like this documented, that we can now, when we have a meeting with that district, we can say like, here's where we think you're at. what do you think? Whereas before there was not like a shared understanding. So that's really helped us move that work forward. And we're hoping that this is a model for other county offices to really think about how to do this work. So I'll just end here by saying in California, we recognize that like the time is now for taking this to scale. We are thinking about this at the statewide level of like that right now it seems kind of voluntary, but it really is inevitable. For example, our Department of State Architects has made sustainability a fourth pillar for all things that happen in schools related to construction and renovation. So that's like an example of this kind of like, it's inevitable, you need to make this shift. And I shared all those policies before. So we really try to help our districts understand like, where are you at? Like, are you kind of thinking that you can avoid this for a while? Or are you like a district that's like, let's do it and super spicy? And we're really trying to help them figure out where they're at and move them forward. We also really do see that bigger picture landscape that, different agencies like the U.S. Department of Ed or K-12 Climate Action Plan are calling for this change and are really saying things like every school district should have a climate action plan and an adaptation plan within 5 years. So we know from a county office in California that our school, especially our small to medium-sized school districts, will need the backbone support of a county office to do that work, just for the expertise, but also for the boots on the ground piece of it. So we are excited that momentum has built in California. We have, like I mentioned, we were the first county office to do this, but now there's at least 10 other county offices that have launched an initiative or have some FTE being put towards environmental literacy and sustainability. And we just launched this year in August, a statewide community of practice for county offices. And we were excited to see that 40 out of the 58 were interested in sending somebody to learn more and to try to move the work forward. So I'll just end here by saying we need a lot more though to continue to build the momentum. So we need to see every COE invest in this. We need to see our state Department of Ed staff a position at the state Department of Ed for this. And we also need a lot more from our policymakers and funders to make this happen. So yeah, that's the presentation that I just wanted to give the broad overview and would love to answer any questions that people have.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I see there is, somebody is having access with slides access. So if we can check on that, that'd be great. James, if you want to go ahead with your question.
Sure, thanks. Thank you for the great presentation and the very important work. So a question of how the networking is taking place in the cooperation. So in particular, I work with different programs that are already taking action in the schools. For instance, with the Girl Scouts, with field trip hubs and science festivals. So these are a program that's been started in Washington, D.C. first, the ability for students to take community level action to survey and audit the energy of buildings. They can be their school, the shopping center, any place. They can quickly audit it and they can take place as STEM and actually be able to tell, is this building efficient lighting or is it inefficient lighting? It's a very powerful program. How do we network with others? Because we're not saying that's the solution to climate change, right? There are thousands of things that need to be done and we need to work with them, but we also need examples for students in schools of the ways that they can take action. How do we work with others? How do we work with you?
Yeah, so for us, with the networks that are really focused on doing more of that, facilities type help, it's taken us a long time to figure out how to sort out the different partners and what is the appropriate network and who's the right person in the school district to talk to. So I feel in order to the process we go through with partners is that we have a vetting call. We look at what the different things are. We think about how are they going to come into our, how can I match them up with different school districts? So that's the general process that we use. Most of the networks that I mentioned are really hyper local, right? It's mostly local folks. And then when we do larger things, when we host our annual symposium, or we have a professional development program, then we bring in some of the bigger national partners as well. So that's kind of how things have functioned for us. But I think what I'm hearing is that it would be great to have a partner like that organization to really think about how can we serve the entire state and how can we think more thoughtfully about that. So I feel that's a good fit would be in our community of practice. or in some of our, in the Cali Innovation Hub for the COEs, we have a number of different working groups. So some of our groups, like our group that's focused on district plans, that might be a good way to connect with us, is through that program as well.
And I actually just want to put a note in there too. This may be something to pin Katie or Gina or whomever. Okay, sorry, it's Gina today. Katie's there too. About like with the board call related to clean, because there may be things that we want to expand into in clean that start to provide a resource bank across state boundaries for some of these other nuanced things that are to do with that kind of climate literacy, energy awareness that could help schools do the move that's going on in California and San Mateo. So, because I mean, like the examples that you just named, James, I was like, oh, I want that too. You know, like, so it would be really great to think about how to structurally do it across the states.
Yeah. And then Amy, I don't know if you want to mention the website that we have a website that we're working on building out across the state. It's right now, the website is for community-based partners who serve student-facing programs. So more of those like field trip type programs, but it would be interesting to think about how to do like a searchable, filterable website that does these other types of services as well. I think that would be really critical. It's just really helped to have these kind of filterable type of resources.
Oh yeah, super helpful. Frank.
So not my question, but the work EcoRise is doing on the Gen Thrive initiative, and I know Amy, you're already checking it out. What they're trying to do is they expand out of Texas and I think Louisiana, is do exactly what you just described in a robust, scalable way. So, and I think they have funding to expand from there. So I'm glad that you guys are talking about, but that's not my question. Andra, I'd love to see how the whole school sustainability and climate resilience integration framework, wow, that's a lot of words, works relative to career. And then the second piece of that is how does that, because climate's got some unique aspects to it. And over the years, climate has kind of progressed from climate literacy to now more like education for climate action. And, and it's moving, but one of the key things in that move is an equity and justice focus, but also a career and a career workforce focus. Those two things, and there's not the only ones, but I guess maybe my core question is, can we collaborate on these frameworks? Because I think that's actually really, really important, especially when you got people from different states and different regions. Having a unified framework that kind of is the next generation of the climate literacy guide is something I'm interested in.
Yeah, totally. I think so for us with CTE, and I wish my colleague Daron was here because he's our college and career person, and he's leading the Cali Innovation Hub for CTE as well. He's co-chairing that. But I think that conversation is really alive right now for us. And we're working in San Mateo County to build out what would the model look like at the local level to really do this. And so I put the strategic plan that he wrote in the chat box just so you could see it. It's a work in progress, but he's really thinking deeply about like, how do we do this? And so one of the first things that we did was to just define what the green economy is for our school districts, because we saw that people did not really understand it. They thought, oh, this is just jobs in solar and wind. And we were like, no, this is every single CTE cluster has a connection to sustainability. So I just put that in the chat box as well. Like we did a deep dive in like, where are these sectors going? And now what we're doing with that is working with our different school districts. In the high school districts is where CTE happens in California, helping them start to transform the existing CTE programs to start to infuse sustainability into it. And then also to open up more pathways that are directly related to sustainability as well. And then what Daron did is he launched a pilot project with a strong workforce grant where he is trying to build out middle school pathways as well. So he developed a middle school elective curriculum that is exposure to different sectors, but has kids work on design challenges in that sector that are related to sustainability. So we're really excited. That pilot program is just coming to an end. I think there's some of it coming to an end in December and then more in the spring. So we'll have a bunch of different stories coming out of that as well, of how to really do that thoughtfully in the middle school space as well. So I'm excited about it. Yes, he would love to work with you all more, and I would as well. I think that would be promising.
That'd be great. Don.
So I'm wondering how well coordinated the county offices of education are. And I ask because of my very long-standing frustration with the similar structure in New York, the BOCES, which is Board of Cooperative Educational Services. It seems to me, from a long experience of working with those folks in New York State, that it's very, very personality dependent on what person is in that particular position at what particular BOCES, and the coordination is very weak across the state. And there's, there are some initiatives from the State Science Teachers Association, but again, not terribly strong or terribly well funded. And it relates to other frustrations of, we've got NGSS-based standards that were officially adopted in 2017 in New York, but won't be tested at the high school level until 2025, which I find absolutely maddening. And it's a different question, but I'm wondering about the difference between adoption and implementation in other states too. I think that's,
yeah, I think that's such a good question. So I mean, was new to the county space. Like I just, when I took the job, I was like, what is a county office of ed? Like, I was like, I don't even know what that is. Right. And that's like coming from a school site. Like we had very little interaction with our county office of ed at the school site level. So, but once I got into the space and started to see like, how are things coordinated in California, I feel like it really varies depending on what you're focused on. Right. So like, I think we've had a lot of, and Amy could probably speak to this more, but we've had really interesting coordination with NGSS rollout across the state. I'd say a very strong rollout for NGSS in particular. And so that, and there's a statewide science community of practice and a math community of practice that brings together all these different county offices of ed. And that's what inspired us to do the community of practice for the COEs that are focused around environmental literacy and sustainability, is because we saw the success of those different statewide networks. Now, whether or not that always trickles down to implementation, I'm not sure across the state how great that's working in every region, but I have attended a lot of those different curriculum statewide communities of practice and seen a lot of success in different regions. And so I feel like it's well organized in that sense. And there's a lot of intentional bringing together of folks. But I do think it always comes down to what's going to happen in your local level. And in fact, we were just planning out our community of practice coming up to talk about curriculum. And we were saying, well, every county office is structured so differently. Like, what does curriculum and instruction even mean in your county, right? And like having those, we don't have those conversations enough, I think. So I think we're excited to bring a conversation like that so people can have a more thoughtful reflection of like, well, how do we apply what we're learning about in our specific context, in our specific case? Because it is really different. And again, I'm sure that's true for all the different states. Everybody's going to have such a different structure.
yeah, and I think Amy's point in the chat is probably a good one. Though in New York, we have very standardized curriculum at the high school because of the longstanding Regents exams. But,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Eric.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Really interesting presentation, and I'm very aware of San Mateo County's progressive sort of work in this area. I'm curious about some reflections you have. I'm in Alameda County, Oakland in particular, and I'm thinking about the Oakland district. Grew up here, and Oakland's very progressive in a lot of things it does, but it's also very fractured. And oftentimes you've got this progressive element of climate literacy kind of integration across K-12 curriculum, but the inability to really kind of push it through. And similar, it was interesting to hear that you had 40% language learners. Oakland is very similar, Alameda County in general, even more so actually. And just any guidance, thoughts, tips and tricks around work, getting buy-in, not only buy-in sort of across school districts, but buy-in even, and it sounds like you're getting to that sort of granular size of working with the school districts and finding out how the curriculum's integrated with everything else. But I think, when there's a district like Oakland is so big, but it's so different. You've got the hill schools, the flatland schools, and everything in between. And you must have that certainly in San Mateo County at some level too. So just curious about any experiences you've had working with language learning schools or schools that you don't have buy-in from, and is there sort of sharing across districts? Do you see that at the school district level, sharing across schools? Some of those are the real challenges I think that are happening in my city. So just curious about some of the reflections around that.
Yeah, gosh, I have so many thoughts on that. I mean, one thing I will say is that I feel like things do work differently in the larger urban school districts. And I think that like the model that I shared is more about like, how is a county office able to support the smaller and medium-sized school districts? So I'm saying that because I think a lot of the larger urban school districts do this more in-house, like they have a director of sustainability or sustainability coordinator. And then that feels different, right? Because then they're working within their own district. As opposed to like operating from the outside coming into the district. But that doesn't mean it's easier. It just means it's different, right? And so we try to be mindful of that conversation when we talk in the Cali COE Innovation Hub, of really being aware of that. But I would say in general, I don't think that buy-in is any different, no matter what, in those different contexts. What I've realized when it comes to buy-in is really that I need the grassroots level, and I need to I need to find ways to empower the grassroots level. And so we do a lot of coaching student leaders and a lot of coaching teachers to feel like they have a voice, to understand that what they're bringing is change and that people are going to resist that change. So we spend a lot of time doing the coaching and the capacity building at that level to build the confidence. Like, for example, we have a school district where there was very little buy-in from the school district. And so we worked very closely with a bunch of high school leaders who have now we supported them to identify all the different champions at every single school site, to reach out to them to say, we're going to launch a district-wide sustainability committee. And they were able to get board members. So who showed up to the first meeting was teachers, students, board members, and a principal. Nobody from the district showed up, right? And so that's a really good example of like, they haven't gotten the buy-in yet from the district, but now the district understands, oh, we have change makers at every single level, and we're the only ones not at the table, right? So that took a long time. That took us, I would say that project has been like 18 months, right? But the payoff has been incredible to have that like moment happen, and to now be able to say to the district, like, okay, here's your folks, like, do you want help engaging with them? And so sometimes we're working at both sides of it, not in a adversarial way, but to actually help them stop being adversaries and start being allies. That's kind of like the way we usually frame it for them. But it does take that deep, I think it's taken us that deep work with these different grassroots leaders in order to help them navigate the change process. And it's hard. And the kids don't always understand why it's so hard. I don't either, to be honest, but the kids, it's really hard to help them understand why it's so hard.
Maybe one other follow-up question. Key allies, key jurisdictions, agencies like cities, and also I sit on our county recycling board, which is doing incredible progressive work with respect to, connecting waste streams and greenhouse gas and carbon sequestration, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of good work there. Curious about strategic partners that you found really helpful in your county.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of really great strategic partners. So we have a county office of sustainability who's been absolutely like one of our best partners, mainly because they can open up doorways to so many other folks that they already network with. So they've been critical. Also, we have a community choice aggregate for energy in our county. So Peninsula Clean Energy, they have been an incredible partner. They have provided thousands and thousands of dollars of funding for us to do capacity building programs. So I'd say they're one of our strongest funding partners. And then I put in the chat box, and I'll just really quickly share my screen on this. In order to help better identify where some of the partnerships are, we actually spent the time analyzing all the different climate action plans of all of our different cities. I was trying to see where I could find the link to that. So we did like a jurisdictional analysis of really understanding like what is happening in each city, who are the school districts within those boundaries, and then figuring out what are the different climate goals of each of those different cities, and who are the different agencies involved in that. And that has really helped us to go that next step of like matchmaking and really doing those partnerships. And I could not have done this without having like Climate Corps fellows and that staff that I mentioned before. Like, these projects are so big and take so much time that I really needed more staffing to be able to do that. And I think a strong partnership with a program like Climate Corps is a great way to do pieces like this that are landscape analysis and are just like a one-time project that have like tremendous long-term benefit.
Okay, I need you to write that statement down and like put it in a skywriter somewhere.
I'm so glad that it was recorded. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's like a moment where I like need to come back and type my own like statement out.
Seriously, because the issue even just of landscape analyses, it's been like I agree with you. I think it's like so critical to have that as a grounding, to be able to understand like what is the terrain, the like people and policies and actors in that space to be able to do this work. So
And the investment to do that, right? So Climate Corps Fellow is no more than $35,000. 58 times 35,000 is nothing to have the impact of just that. And that was just one project, right? That was only like a 4 to 6 week project. Imagine what else a Climate Corps Fellow can do when you invest in that. Like that's totally reasonable investment.
yeah, it's awesome. Frank?
So, wow, I am so happy this is recorded because this is so timely. But to the climate action plan analysis, one of the things that's coming out of the Glasgow work program on action for climate empowerment is to embed ACE, which is, education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to climate information, and collaboration into a climate plan, like a climate action plan. But one of the things we've noticed since 2017 is a lot of towns, counties, states, climate action plan, when it gets to this type of conversation, it's really thin.
Yeah.
And so what I would be interested in is, one, how awesome were those plans that related to ACE or the work we're talking about right now? And could you imagine what they would be like in their next version that would be better than what they are right now? So it's two parts.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, it took us a really long time to wrap our head around like, what is a climate action plan, how is it structured? And like, do schools have any actual responsibility for them, or is it all suggestions? And so, I mean, it took like, we were like really going back and forth with different folks on that. And then we found out that, yeah, it really is just advisory at this point for school districts. Like the climate action plans have no jurisdictional oversight over the school district. So they're just saying, please join us. And the school districts haven't really been at the table for it. So for those folks who are in their revision process, we have found that those sustainability, like the city folks who are doing the revision, they're starting to invite youth voice, and they're starting to invite principals, and they're starting to invite teachers, and they're starting to invite those people in the reimagining of the climate action plan, so that education is more invested and is more involved. But like, it's all of them are on a different cycle, but I'm excited to see like where that will go as more and more of them are being revised. And then I think the other piece of it is that for climate adaptation side of it, that's another conversation we're having in our county, is like not just a climate action plan, but an adaptation plan, and trying to do that at once, because so many of our school districts don't know the data of how vulnerable they are to sea level rise, or how we're in our county, we're the most vulnerable county to sea level rise. And we also have the least amount of air conditioners per capita. So, and of course, in one of the places where there's lack of air conditioning is our schools, right? So like, that is like a really critical thing, is to help the schools and the cities work together to solve these issues, so that schools could be those like hubs. So I'm not positive I answered your question, Frank, but I know that we had a lot of curiosity around it.
But would you say there was any one action plan that was like, as it related to education, was awesome?
No.
Need a lot of growth and improvement.
No, I would say all of them needed more education stakeholders to be involved, but I am working with so we work with the youth commissioners in our county. So the county youth commission, we help them support a project where they're getting they passed their own climate emergency declaration, and now they're getting every school district to do it. So that was last year's project. This year's project is we're co-authoring a climate action plan with the youth that is for school districts, so that we can try to help marry the two worlds a bit. So that's a project we're working on, but I would say right now, no, we have not seen a whole lot of success historically before all these projects with a city and a school district working together on a climate action plan.
Such a really good option, like for going forward in so many different fronts, like for cities getting more like brains on in terms of their community engagement processes. And also for youth getting opportunities to really learn and work and mentor, like get mentored into different roles.
Yeah. And I do think there are contexts where cities do work more closely with their school districts in California, right? Like it's just our county that doesn't have a lot of that. Like in some places, like the mayor meets with the superintendent, right? And like they have like, monthly meetings or whatever, the staffers meet together. I asked, and we don't have any of that happening in our county yet. So, but I know that does exist in other places. So in places where it does, it's like a perfect opportunity to do that faster.
That's great. That's great. All right, we have a little under 10 minutes. Thanks so much again for the shares. They're really, it's very helpful to see inside your work. I'm like, just literally like, oh, what could we do more like this in our project? So yeah, really excellent. Anybody else have other questions? James, do you want to name any of that? Sorry, I didn't quite read it all yet. History, yeah.
I could just say something to you, James, as well. And that we know that can be a real challenge. I'm so lucky to be in San Mateo County, where our County Office of Sustainability has something called RICAPS, where they regionally bring together all the different agencies that wrote the climate action plans monthly, and they tick away at different pieces of it. And so we're just so, again, so fortunate to be in that kind of context. School districts are not yet involved in that, but like that's the bigger context in our county of these climate action plans.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, and if I might, Andrea, I'd like to ask a hard question, but it's actually being protective of you, Amy. That's really where I'm coming from, because I think what you're doing is really important. It would a recommendation of being good about making it clear to people where the influence is in what you're doing. Okay, to like, I mean, for instance, or specifically the fossil fuel industry will influence you. There's no way to keep them from doing it. But having it have to be named and having it be noticed is the one. And here's an example, or an important one, is the Education Environmental Initiative, which is a precursor, gigantic K-12 textbooks for all of California, massive program years ago, ended up having a PR person, a lobbyist for Chevron, be the editor of the entire program. She got to call the shots on what was in the books. She told editors, writers, no, we're going to put this in. She controlled it. And when that was exposed, they just hit her. Okay. And it made front page news about, for instance, the plastic bag industry got to write the content about plastic bags. We don't want to have that happen to you. Right. And if Chevron and if Need and everybody have to kind of name that they're there or not be able to get in SLY, I don't think they're going to have quite the subversive influences they have. And so it's just being protective of that. If you're going to influence us, you can't do it in secret. So maybe the question would be, are we doing it? You know, has there been anything to kind of have those guardrails or have that as a requirement that to prevent against that?
You know, I personally haven't been approached yet by that, but I do know that 10 Strands has dealt with a little bit of that. And, but I personally haven't had to deal much with that yet. So I feel fortunate for that. But my county superintendent has had some pushback when she stepped out to say things about like, you know, we support our students to do things like climate advocacy and you know, and youth climate movement marches. So we do get pushback. But I personally have not been dealing with it, but I really appreciate that kind of warning and keeping my eyes open for that, especially as we go into this bigger project of the climate and environmental justice curriculum. That is, we are keeping that thought alive in that conversation as that project starts to get off the ground.
Amy, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, you're muted.
Just that I wasn't involved in the EEI curriculum when it was put together, starting like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. And I think we're fortunately in a very different place politically where transparency, inclusivity, and process are valued, and investing in making sure that we have the right people at the table to make those decisions is being thought about at every step along the way, which I'm not sure was how as a society curriculum was published even 15 years ago. So I think, thank you for the heads up. And I think the name of the game there is just figuring out how to push, as I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, how to push far enough to make a difference and talk about real issues, but not push so far that people are scared to use the curriculum. And that's just a big challenge. And Andrea and I might be more on the pushing side, and other groups might be more on the watered down side. And that's just something that we're going to have to navigate.
I think the nation's navigating that right now in so many ways. Yeah. Frank, I saw your hand up. Did you want to, yeah, okay, Ginger, go ahead.
Excuse me. Along with that warning from the fuel companies in your mention, Andra, about starting the environmental justice part, I would suggest that you look for the proactive environmental faith-based groups, because I think your pushback is going to come from the same crowds that are fighting CRT and protections for trans kids, and those are based in the churches. So those are very organized. I don't know if you've had any issues with it in your area, but we've had flips of our school districts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel very fortunate. I was a director of sustainability at a private Catholic high school, and we were the first to invest in a full-time sustainability director at the K-12 level. So we were very connected with our Catholic schools community in California, and they're very invested in this work of environmental literacy and sustainability. And they're a strong partner working at the California Catholic bishops level to really do this in schools. But I really appreciate that idea of knowing that we can be friends in one arena and maybe not friends in another. And so really kind of like being mindful of those relationships.
And I would think if you could, for example, get the Catholic bishops to maybe speak out if the other, whatever they are, evangelicals or whatever, if you could get the faith leaders to call them out or, write letters to the editor in support, so that you don't have to be responding and you can just stay out. I think that would be the best approach, probably.
That's great. Well, I like that idea.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Across the nation, like through the work that we've been doing in Access, there has been identification of a number of different challenges. And in the work that we've done to create the climate change education policy, which should be out shortly, that work, we really had to navigate a lot of different issues inside that. Because, and even in any state, even like Washington state, there are really conservative areas in the state where we've had to navigate and provide resources. Yeah. All right, I'm going to actually wrap us up because I see we are 2 minutes to go and I want to respect everybody's time. Really fabulous. Thank you so much for the share today. And again, I apologize for like just being a little bit, not fully on top of things today. We are next week, I think it's Tamara or Frank, one or the other, is facilitating, and I think have an informal session next week. Does anybody know off the top of their head?
Yeah, that's correct. And we'll probably focus on discussing AGU. I haven't gotten confirmation yet, but Patrick may be able to join us next week. So we can also give him a little send off is what we were thinking. So I'll confirm that through email, but yeah, I think those will be the big topics for next week.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing all the folks. I'll likely see folks next week, but if I don't, I'll see some of you in AGU or in various AGU meetings. All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Gina, you have the slides, right? You're good?